People's Business is made possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
Good evening and welcome to The People's Business on this first day of October 2023. Today we will be looking at the state of trade between Barbados and Suriname. Yes, how is this republic trading with that Dutch country? And we have as our guest this evening, Ms. Alphea Wiggins, the Prime Minister's Special Envoy to Suriname and Guyana. Trisha Tannis, Chairperson of the Barbados Private Sector Association. Rekhar Bissumbhar, the Chairperson of the Private Sector Association of Suriname, and Mr. Henk-John Guicherit, the Director of the Suriname Investment and Trade Agency. So we have all the major players who are into that area of trade, and we want to welcome you, our viewers, to this evening's People's Business. I'm Wendy Burke, and we'll be back after the break. And we're back. We're talking trade between Barbados and Suriname. We all know what Barbados looks like. There's some of you who may not be familiar with what Suriname has to offer. But join us for this short video which will explore the country. And let's go now to our panelists to get some opening comments in relation to the state of affairs between the two countries and their trade. I will let the Special Envoy lead off here. Can you tell us succinctly, Alphea, what is the state of trade at present?
So I will start by saying to you that this new strategic dialogue and cooperation platform was signed last July on the margins of the CARICOM Heads of Government Conference by the then Foreign Minister, Senator Dr. the Most Honorable Mr. Jerome Walcott, and His Excellency Mr. Albert Ramdeen, Foreign Minister of Suriname. And they signed this, they established this strategic dialogue and cooperation platform as an effective and necessary political framework, and it's the basis for the strategic cooperation of mutual interest, such as political consultations, economic cooperation and investment, tourism, air and sea transportation, agriculture, natural resources, education, building capacity, arts, youth, sports and culture, regional institutions, safety and security. And also to say to you that at this time, Barbados's trade relation with Suriname is actually at the moment characterized by a large trade deficit, except for the year 2019. And this is due in part to the low level of exports and high levels of fish imports. Notwithstanding the oil imports from Suriname, it should be noted that fish was actually the largest imported commodities. Hence, with the non-importation of oil, Barbados would still have a very large trade deficit with Suriname.
Okay, if I can go to the people on the ground in Suriname who would be mapping out for us exactly what is happening within their trading sector. I want to go first to Ms. Rekhar Bissumbhar, the chairperson of the Private Sector Association of Suriname. Can you tell me, for you, in terms of you and your membership, how do you assess the current state of trade?
So good evening, friends of Barbados. If I have to look at where we stand now and where we were in 2013, then we have both saw a decline in the trade between Barbados and Suriname. It was 10 times higher than where we are now. So we have to look at the challenges and address those challenges to pick up and make the trade between both countries more effective. So a lot to do. A lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities.
Okay, if I can hear from you now, Mr. Henk-John, in terms of those deficits and how your association, the Investment and Trade Agency, may be able to assist in bolstering that trade.
Yes, thank you for that. Well, you know, as director of the Suriname Investment and Trade Agency, as the name states, we focus not only on exports but also on foreign investments, because of course there's a linkage between the two. The opportunities are huge, like Rekhar already said, and of course there's a lot of talk about oil and gas, which is fine, but we try to move beyond oil and gas and diversify the economy more. I think MOUs are great, strategic programs are great, but we have to step up to the plate. And I must be maybe a little bit careful here, but I must say, if you look at the past few years, that the private sector has done more in terms of export from Suriname than the public sector. And from CETA, we are trying to bridge between the government and the private sector. So I think a better cooperation is good. That's one issue. And the other issue is that the people from Suriname have an historical reflex to look at the Dutch market because of the colonial past. But those days are behind us. So I think that the first thing we have to do is build a better bridge between government and the private sector, one. And secondly, make sure that we focus on the Caribbean and not so much on the former motherland.
Okay, if I can come to you now, Trisha Tannis, chairperson of the Barbados Private Sector Association. What's the stance of your membership in terms of the trade, and have they been taking advantage of some of the opportunities available?
Thank you. Good night, Wendy. Good night to Special Envoy Alphea, and good night to our special guests from Suriname. Certainly, we, as far back as I think 2019, just before the crisis and the pandemic, our trade essentially at that point was, significantly more than it was certainly for the last 3 years put together. And I believe you would have heard Rekhar reference essentially even before that as much as 10 times. And we actually have started dialogue pre-pandemic and at the very, very early days of the pandemic, before it certainly the world went on pause, began to have both bilateral and a tripartite conversation, not just with Suriname, but essentially the heads of government, certainly of Barbados, Suriname, and Guyana, certainly thought that there was an interesting opportunity to triangulate between those three territories. And what we see are significant investment opportunities on both sides. And what is interesting is that the economies are so complementary between Barbados and Suriname. They are a very, very heavy commodities-driven economy. We are very heavily services-driven economy. There's lots of synergies, essentially, that we can lockstep and essentially complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. And Barbados, as we know, is a very food scarce territory, and food security essentially became front and center as an imperative as we went into COVID, and we saw how vulnerable not just Barbados was, but certainly the region. Suriname is extremely well placed to play a very, very critical role in actually stabilizing that food security concern for Barbados and certainly a lot of our CARICOM neighbours. So I'm sure as the hour progresses, we'll get a chance to deep dive a little bit more into specifically where those opportunities could be. But certainly there's a lot of work to be done, certainly from the private sector as well.
Okay, now we're hearing all about it. There are voids to fill. There are areas that we need more exploration in. There's a possibility the trade may not necessarily be equitable at the end of the day because there are items which Suriname may be producing in abundance over and above Barbados's. I want to come back to Rekhar about in terms of your private sector, and what are some of the specific areas that they would want to bolster in? Are there any main sectors that they want to focus on now to up the ante in terms of the trade?
Yes, so from Suriname, we want to focus on the natural resources, and we have many products that we can offer and partner with the business of Barbados. Natural resources, when I think about it, it's including forestry. So we have wood, we have oil, we have water, fresh water, lots of fresh water. We have kaolinite that can be for the construction industry and more. So the natural resources is one focus area that we're looking at. Another is, of course, the agriculture, fruits and vegetables that we can deliver to Barbados. But for that to be picking up speed, we will probably need to partner better or more effectively. And maybe we could think about partnering with the wholesale suppliers and the producers in Suriname, and maybe we can get inputs from Barbados, vice versa, to see how we can build and strengthen each other. We have also the IT services, outsourced IT services, software, but maybe also call centers that can support Barbados where needed. But what we especially want to focus on is tourism. Suriname is the hidden treasure of South America. Diversity in both biodiversity in the population and in wildlife, ecotourism. We are a carbon sink. We are already net zero, so we have carbon credit potential, and we can partner to invest more in Suriname since we can afford a bit more emission, and we're still reducing emission while we're already net zero and a huge carbon sink. So lots of opportunities to build on.
Okay. If I can come now to Alphea, in terms of, before we go to break with the minute we have, in terms of these agreements, is there anything else which needs to be done to ensure that both territories can fully explore what we can trade?
Of course, as a matter of fact, that's the point that I was actually going to be getting at now. The major thing that needs to be done is the building of the air and sea bridges between Barbados and Suriname. And that is important to trade because if you cannot get from Barbados to Suriname and vice versa, trade will not happen. And we've been speaking about it for a very long time. I have had several discussions with the BTMI here, the chairman, Mrs. Williams, and we have met with Flyalways, and this week we're supposed to be meeting with Suriname Airways in terms of the scheduled flights between the countries. And as I said in an earlier newscast, my suggestion was that given that there's a lot of traffic between Barbados and Guyana, we haven't built up the capacity yet between Barbados and Suriname. What they can do, that's Suriname Airways, they can go from the airport in Suriname to Chedijagan Airport and then to Barbados because we have a large traffic going into Guyana. As a matter of fact, this month there's so many meetings in Guyana and so much traffic going into Guyana, then you can always get into Suriname from one of those two airports there. So we are looking at building the air and at least the air capacity, the load factor between the countries. And until that is achieved, we'll be spinning top in mud, as we say. And then we have a plan for multi-destinational tourism between the three Guyanas and Barbados. So we have all these plans on paper, but in order to execute them, the air and sea bridges are critical at this time within the region.
Okay, we have to take a commercial break here, and when we come back, we invite you, our callers, to reach out to us to ask your questions of our panel about these agreements between Barbados and Suriname. Our call numbers 437-228-5562 and 228-5563. Those are our call numbers. We'll be back after the break. And the People's Business is back. We're looking at the state of trade between Barbados and Suriname. Before we went off, the special envoy was telling us about an area that needs to be bolstered. And I want to bring you in here, Henk-John, in terms of this whole airlift, sea lift, etc. Is there anything that your agency can do to help? Because as we said, we're not just talking about the natural resources, we're not just talking about agriculture, but we're also speaking investment. And, you know, businessmen want to be able to see face forward exactly what you're working with if you're going to be making investment into an entity within a country. How can your organization assist?
Well, we are assisting. A lot of it is, I must admit, a lot of it is advocacy. I mean, we spoke to many people from the oil and gas industry, not because we only want to promote oil and gas, but we do want to diversify. But you notice that because of the oil and gas, there is more traffic. Like the senator mentioned, there's more traffic coming from Trinidad, there's more traffic coming from Guyana, and then you can make the stops. You connect Barbados, for instance, with Guyana. You connect the U.S. with Barbados, with Guyana, with Suriname. So in terms of airlift, I think a lot of things are happening. We are talking to all the stakeholders. We're trying to put in, of course, some local content. Suriname Airways was mentioned, and the other Fly Always is mentioned. I think the airlift part is coming, and that looks good. I'm more worried about connectivity overseas. There was one Surinamese company who was actually looking at that, but maybe it's a bit too soon to mention that. But what we're doing is we're getting all the investors and other potential exporters, and we're listing them, and then we talk to the people who want to make the connectivity happen. So it's a lot of advocacy, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of talking. At this point in time, unfortunately, I must admit that airlift is coming, but sea connectivity is still not there where we want to have it.
Okay, so what's the barrier at this point in terms of getting the sea trade to be more active?
The barrier is what one of the panel members from Barbados said, is the barrier is that we have a lot of people who want to ship to Barbados via Guyana or straight to Barbados, but then when the ships come back, they tend to be empty because our economies are complementary, which is good. But for instance, we can ship, for instance, fruits and vegetables, but when the ships come back and they're empty, that makes it difficult. You could, for instance, bring limestone back as an example, but if you look at the products and the volumes, there's not a match yet to make it worthwhile for the investors.
Okay, and Trisha, this is where I want to bring you in. What can BPSA do to make it a little bit more worthwhile for the investors on that end? And what about us going the other way?
Mm-hmm. Well, it went back to essentially what I said in terms of the complementary economies. Now, unfortunately, the complements are in commodities, which we do need the physical logistical capacity to move, and versus essentially the other direction, which is services, which does not need essentially physical capacity to move, which is where the strength typically would be in Barbados. So we have a double whammy, as it were. Certainly, we have a huge trade imbalance of almost over 15 million US dollars, but the majority of that trade imbalance is in commodity. It is therefore a fairly Herculean task, essentially, and it's not a simple answer either, to create the same level of exports or hard commodity exports that essentially will be going in the other direction. We are going to have to certainly implement a more unique and fairly innovative solution, essentially for that return on investment to occur. We may need to look at more efficient shipping lanes, whether or not essentially we can actually abridge other lanes and other essentially movements of goods throughout the region. But as it stands, with the 15 million US dollar investment and with Barbados not being a commodity rich economy, it is very, very likely that the traditional solution is not going to work. I don't think that essentially is going to be enough to fill those ships on the way back. Therefore, we have to look at other investment models that would make it worth the while for the private sector in Suriname, and certainly look at the other opportunities. For example, renewable energy is one that is a very complementary type commodity for them. Tourism, again, is another service. We do have competence in those areas, and therefore it's a case where the trade imbalance essentially is not going to be a commodity for commodity type balance. It's going to be a services versus a commodity balance. But we are going to have to essentially ring fence around with our partners in Suriname, and certainly broader than Suriname, CARICOM, to see what innovative solutions we can bring in terms of a trade imbalance that's actually going in opposite directions, but still complementary. So I don't have a firm answer for you, but it is something that has to be front and center in terms of dialogue, because as Special Envoy Wiggins did say, these are real barriers, not just to trade, but in some cases to return on investments. And what I would like to say is that these finer points essentially are where we actually have to bring the MOUs and the higher level strategic agreements down into actualizing, because if we can't get these things off the ground in very real and practical terms, then unfortunately the MOUs and the high level agreements essentially not going to go anywhere. So at this stage, in terms of taking this forward and these agreements forward, we're at the stage now where private sector to private sector, we actually need to sit down and actually through the investment details, where are the returns on investment, where are the opportunities in real terms, and what kind of innovative solutions can we bring to actually balance the trade without necessarily balancing the commodities, because I don't think that's where Barbados is going to be very strong.
Okay, now in terms of the position you've just put forward, this is where I want to bring Rekhar in. You spoke about the carbon sink which Suriname has to offer and so on, but Ms. Tannis offered up suggestions about our renewable energy technologies. We're very strong in the solar sector. Is that an area that Suriname is interested in exploring with Barbados?
Absolutely, because we also have to transition to renewables, and we have already some renewables, but we want to do solar Suriname, and if Barbados has experience in solar and other proven renewables, we would definitely find ways to partner and build on the strengths of Barbados. So definitely, but for sure, tourism, Barbados is master in tourism, and all the services provided in tourism. So focusing on the multi-destination and services that Barbados can give to Suriname to bring Suriname up to speed also regarding tourism would help. So building on what was mentioned just now by the private sector of Barbados would be a good thing to do.
Okay, so you've heard it from her, Trisha. She's willing to sit and meet and help us strengthen that relationship. Not just Alphea will be doing the heavy lifting in terms of the agreements and the policy level, but at least we know that those on the ground who will be doing the trade are willing to meet each other face to face. No,
However, Wendy, excuse me, I
yes.
want to share, however, that in terms of renewable energy, Solar Dynamics have an interest in Suriname, and they do have solar water heaters in Suriname for quite a while. And so we have, in fact, embarked on that conversation in terms of the renewables, in terms of PV panels and so on. What I would have found a couple years ago when I was in Suriname was that they were not keen on generating electricity by the PV panels and so on because the price of gas was so much cheaper in Suriname than it is in Barbados that they were not enthusiastic about it. But certainly the water heaters just need to take off a little bit more. I know they're under new management now, but Mr. Husbands will be able to direct Mr. Connolly in terms of the people that he has to get in touch with there in order to spread the solar water heaters in Suriname. That's very well accepted. And because of the vast hinterlands, they need not only the panels to heat the water, also to generate electricity. Because, like I said, in the interior, there are lots of empty spaces where there's no electricity. So it's a good thing to do. But if I were to step back a little bit, we were talking a little bit about the generation. Otherwise, I'm saying to you that Suriname, in terms of importing stuff from Barbados, when we talked about bringing the fruits and vegetables here, because we import a lot of fruit and vegetables and fish, snapper, dolphins, marlin from Suriname, and they're saying the boats are going back empty. But within the last couple of months, where the limestone would have been going back on those boats, Suriname has not been importing limestone from Barbados. So that has also contributed to the deficit between the two countries. So they are not importing as much, but they're exporting everything to Barbados. So I always tell them relationship is a two-way street. So we are taking a lot of their products. They have to take what we have, which in our case is limestone, and as I said, all the renewable energy technologies and so on.
Okay, Hendrik, can you weigh in here before we go to our next break in terms of why this limestone is no longer as key for you all in Trinidad? What's happening in terms of your building situation?
With regards to limestones, I'm not sure if I can add value. Maybe Rekhar can, but I do want to get into the subject of solar energy. I think solar energy is very important for Suriname, so I really want to talk to your exporters and investors about that. Senator Wiggins made the argument, which I agree. We are energy independent, which is important. Look what's happening in Europe with Ukraine. So we have to be energy independent, but we have to move away from fossil fuel to energy. The interior really needs solar energy. What we're doing now is we're transporting oil in the interior to get energy, which is not very sustainable. So I'm very interested to build on that further with regards to solar energy. With regards to limestone, I must say I'm not very well informed. Maybe Rekhar, you can
Okay,
add something
Rekhar,
there?
can you tell us what's happening with the limestone situation by chance?
I think the awareness is not there that Barbados has to offer limestone that can be used in the agriculture. So I spoke to some of the companies who mentioned that they would be needing limestone to make more areas more productive. So they would treat it with limestone. So there is potential for limestone need. There is a demand for potential. There is a demand for limestone. So I think a B2B trade missions to Suriname would help, and also from our side to Barbados, to get the businesses, the private sector speaking to each other and connecting them to get this moving. So
Okay, and
we would be probably needing.
is your association at this point willing to facilitate those B2B missions?
Definitely, together with Henk-John, because VSB is working together with CETA, we need to bring in more investors and make more ground more productive so we can take more limestone and we can produce more. So it would be a two-way street, of course. And we have to focus on getting more trade within the CARICOM market. Both Barbados and Suriname are importing way too much from Asia. So if we want to strengthen the CARICOM and the developing nations, Suriname and Barbados, we have to collaborate more and build on each other's strengths. So what we can get from each other, let's try to focus it and not focus so much on getting things from Asia. But of course, competitive prices are important.
That as well. Okay,
If
we're
if I
gonna
may
take
add to
a
that,
yes.
oh,
If you
sorry.
can go quickly, Hank John.
Real quickly, Reka and I work together. That means CETA and the private sector. We're doing trade missions, for instance, to the Dominican Republic. But I'm going to be visiting Barbados for the Energy Summit. So I'm inviting everybody to let's have meetings during the Energy Summit, and we can talk about export, we can talk about investments, and let's talk about limestone.
Okay, glad to hear it. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, you can join us. You can call us if you have any questions for our panel. Oh, okay, Rivka, you wanted to say something before we
I
go to
wanted,
break?
yes, if you have a minute, I wanted to invite everybody to Suriname, and I have a clip of 1 minute. I don't know if you have the 1 minute after the break, then maybe I can ask people to visit Suriname with the video.
Okay, we'll do that on our return. 228-5562, 228-5563 are our call numbers if you have any questions. If you want to possibly invest in Suriname, or if you want to call from Suriname to find out about how you can invest in Barbados, 228-5562, 228-5563. I'll see you back in a moment.
agreement touches on. What is very interesting is particularly the area of arts and culture. Youth and sport. Now, those are not necessarily traditional areas of economic opportunity that normally make the front burner of trade discussions, but those essentially are areas that are extremely captivating, exciting, would actually, I think, capture the imagination of young entrepreneurs in both countries, and are certainly non-traditional, and certainly present huge capacity, certainly outside of the CARICOM, and it's high time that these non-traditional type areas of economic opportunity essentially come to the front burner, and that we start monetizing them, for the betterment of our countries, and to build resilience with the next generation as well, because these are the types of economic activities that I think are more the grassroots and DNA of our future economic growth than maybe what we have known traditionally.
Okay, I'm glad you spoke to that issue, and I want to bring Henk-John in here now to look at that very sector. What scope, I know you all produce a lot of raw materials that are helpful in the area of textiles, clothes design, that type of thing. But what about our music industry and being able to plug into your society, etc.? Or is it a situation where maybe the language, the Dutch, presents a barrier?
Well, it presents a barrier going one way. I mean, I don't think many people from Barbados will like Dutch music, but the Surinamese people love Jamaican music. Plus, a lot of the music that is made here is not even in Dutch anymore. It's more a mix of English and the local languages, the so-called Sranantongo, which sounds a bit like some Jamaican slang. So I don't think it's a language barrier that much, because most of the music is not Dutch. We like Jamaican music. We also think about reggae, but from Barbados, the style is different, but people like that also. It's not a big business here at all. We could learn from Barbados. We can learn from Jamaica. Also with sports, I mean, we have a lot of heroes from different Caribbean countries, and Suriname is not that strong at it. So I think when it comes to exporting athleticism, if you may call it, and those kinds of musical endeavors, we can learn a lot from the Caribbean. We're not that strong, we're maybe stronger in terms of heritage, because we have all the different cultures here, like the African cultures and the Asian cultures. So that makes us a little bit stronger. But in terms of music and sports, we can learn a lot from you guys.
Okay, because I was about to ask, what suppose a promoter wanted to bring either a food festival to you, a rum festival to you, or generally a musical showcase. What would the scope of that be? And what are some of the things that would be necessary for them to actually work within Suriname? I know we have the agreements coming out of CARICOM in terms of free movement, etc. But are there any other no-tos that our people would need to have in hand before they could even think about approaching to create something for the Surinamese people?
Again, not my strong suit. Rekhar, I'm going to look to you again, if you can help me out with this one.
I think the trade missions will be a start, and then how would we be able to build on it? Let's think about the rum event. People from Suriname like rum, so if Barbados has different type of rum, we can definitely have a rum tasting Barbados night, for instance, and mix with the Barbados culinary specialties that there are. So we can then get more people from Suriname to appreciate that and then know why they should visit Barbados as well. So would be a good start to do.
All right. We have a caller on the line. Good evening to you.
Hi, good evening.
Go right ahead.
Wendy. I just want to say good evening to the panel. Good evening to Special Envoy Alphea Wiggins. Good evening to Ms. Tannis and to the Surinamese. I have learned to say Suriname. Just allow me to say that I have been there twice. It is a beautiful country. It is ethnically diverse. The food is rich. I would never forget eating something called pom. The members Suriname kid attest to this. And I'm here thinking, why is this such a heavy load? I did not have any difficulty navigating the country. I mean, I do speak several languages, but I did not have any difficulty communicating with the average Surinamese person. Not at all. So I'm saying, like, what's the next step? Where do we take this? It is, yes, I understand the difficulty with sea and air transportation, or the lack thereof. But how do we take this? I know that the special envoy is working assiduously, but what is it, and what is needed next? And the other thing I wish clarified, I do not understand what is B2B. Perhaps I did not listen intently from the beginning, but
Okay.
I do not understand what is B2B. So I will close here, but I love Suriname.
Okay. I'll let you take it, Special Envoy.
Thanks very much to the caller. And B2B is business to business, is just the shortened form. But I would say, in terms of navigating Suriname, the language is not an issue. I've been there 4 years now, and I've never had a problem navigating Suriname, either on the ground, in speaking to people, or otherwise. I would also say, however, that in terms of the culture, Alison Hines has gone and Red Plastic Bag and Keisha Christian, because Suriname's independence is on the 25th of November, and Red Plastic Bag, Keisha Christian, and Adrian Clark went down there and played to large audiences in Suriname. Music is infectious, it is cultural, it has no barriers. So there will be absolutely no problem in terms of the exchange of culture. And to add to that, I also want to say that I have initiated with the University of the West Indies the teaching of Dutch in Barbados. And the University of the West Indies have now approved that Dutch course that we'll be introducing to Barbados. Also, when I was last in Suriname, I had meetings with the Acorn University, and those discussions are continuing, because I'll be bringing those people here to meet with the Private Sector Association, so that the business people can have a taste of what speaking in Dutch is all about, because we even speak about venturing into Holland, getting into Holland in that market via Suriname. So yes, the learning of Dutch is going to be very important, and I have already initiated those. But other than that, I can tell you, living in Suriname is absolutely no problem, because they know English very well. And I think that we should learn some Dutch. So I wanted to clarify that aspect for you.
Okay. I saw Hank there giving it the thumbs up.
Now,
Right.
I just quickly want to add to that. Yes, it's true what the caller said about visiting Suriname is great, but also look at the other way around. When people from Suriname travel, what do they usually go? They go to Amsterdam because they want to go to relatives in Europe. They go to Miami because they want to go shopping, and then they go to Curacao to go to the beach. I mean, why don't they go to Barbados? I mean, Barbados has great beaches. We have a beautiful country with beautiful nature, but we do not have beautiful beaches. So I think there is something there to be found.
There's lots there to be found.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of the tourism aspect, you all had said before that there's a lot that you can learn from Barbados's tourism product because of how well developed it is. For you, Rekhar, how would you want to see that transfer of knowledge being done? Would you want it to be in the areas of training, special areas within your tourism sector, in terms of actually being within the hotel spaces, or would it be a situation where you would just want to have the main players imparted with some more marketing assistance, what have you? How would you see it playing out?
I think I see it on all the three areas. So providing us training first, but also investing together with partners in Suriname, because the tourism is expected to boost. The oil and gas sector is going to attract a lot of people to Suriname, but those people would like to visit the Caribbean and Suriname interior. But we are very young in the tourism sector, not mature enough and how to service tourists. So partnering with the tourism organizations in Barbados could help us strengthen the sector in Suriname. And of course, the investment opportunity is there for the hotel. We would be needing more hotels, we would be needing more entertainment, we would be needing much more. So the music, Barbados has excellent music, those festivals that we can organize together in Suriname. So there's much more that we could build on and learn from Barbados.
Okay, and I'm glad that we're in a position to help you learn and understand and bolster your own tourism sector. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we will talk more investment, more trade between Barbados and Suriname. The People's Business. We are talking Suriname and Barbados in terms of the area of trade. Our call numbers 228-5562, 228-5563. You can still get in one or two more calls before the program winds up. We have about another just under 15 minutes or so to go. I want to come back to Senator Wiggins about the fact that other institutions within Barbados are coming on board to be a part of this new trade initiative that we've set up with Suriname. Outside of the University of the West Indies, outside of having our private sector agencies on board, outside of having the government on board, how much more far and wide-reaching do you see this agreement becoming, and what other areas would you want to bring on board? Like, for example, Suriname has a wide array of woods and so on to offer us. Would you want to see our housing corporation or contractors associations or SJPI, etc., being a part of the mix as well?
Yeah, thank you, Wendy, once again. In terms of the other institutions that will be coming on board, the Jean and Norma Holder Institute will also be there to assist in the training in the hospitality sector, as well as the NTI. They have that online program that they're working with Guyana as well, that we will be introducing, the NTI will be introducing to help train persons in the hospitality sector. So these are already concrete plans that are in train and they just have to be fully executed. So I just wanted to let the others know that those are on. To speak again of the other interests, in terms of agriculture, we have had several meetings with a geneticist from Holland who is interested in improving the pork and pig stock in Barbados. I know that the BAS have just brought in um, some semen from, I think it was America, but what the geneticists and Barbados from Suriname, what they want to do is to work with pig farmers in Barbados. They don't want to take over the industry. What they want to do would be to expand the production of pigs in Barbados. So say if a farm can produce 50 pigs per year, what the geneticists want to do, he wants to be able to help that farmer to produce 200 pigs per year and larger pigs so that you get a higher quality of meat. And of course, in the final analysis, you make a lot more money.
Okay, can we stick a pin a minute? When we help to produce that higher quality, bigger pig, are they willing to take Barbados flavored rum bacon from us?
Of course, you remember that we have the food terminal that is being built at Lears, and it is Guyana, Suriname, and Barbados. So all the meat, including from the black belly sheep, that would be produced, everything would be, the food terminal would be the hub where there will be distribution first within CARICOM and the excess will go beyond the shores.
Okay.
Because what we're trying to do is import substitution. So we're trying to import so much lamb, and that's one of the reasons for the sending the black belly sheep to Guyana, so that we can have more sheep. And what they want to do, increase the pig production by, the genetics. So that's exactly what we're trying to do right now.
All righty, we're actually winding down in terms of time. So I want to have parting shots from our other panelists in terms of the agreements, the level of trade, and how your particular agency wants to bolster it. Henk-John, I'll start with you. Henk-John, sorry, I'll start with you first.
No, that's fine. The way we want to do it is, again, like I mentioned, we have a very good relationship with the private sector. We have a very good relationship with the government, but with the building the bridges between those two and leveraging it in the Caribbean, that's not strong enough. So that's what we're doing. My organization, CETA, is traveling around the Caribbean to make those linkages stronger. My first stop, as a matter of fact, is Barbados at the end of this month. So I'd like to invite everybody who wants to talk to me. Let's meet during the Energy Summit. So for us, it's basically strengthening the linkages and building the bridge stronger between the private sector and the government.
Okay, I hope that when I see you then for that summit, you'll have lots of updates to give me. Rekhar?
Well, I think that the biggest barrier is the shipping line and the ship transportation that we need to improve. So we're looking for partnership and investment also primarily there to enhance trade both ways. So welcome, and let's discuss it in trade and increase the export from both Barbados to Suriname and from Suriname to the Caribbean. So let's have these trade missions.
Okay, Trisha?
Well, we spoke about a lot of things, Wendy, over the last hour or so. I think what the role that BBSA can play certainly is to help work along with our compatriots in Suriname, and certainly Ms. Wiggins, in terms of maybe bringing a holistic strategy to bear on the issue of with Suriname. We spoke extensively about several things: logistics, air and sea bridges. We spoke about the various aspects of cooperation. We spoke about business facilitation and education and so on, facilitating agencies. I think what is needed now is that we actually need to pull these all together in a roadmap, a very practical roadmap that we can actually then actualize the vision of these higher level strategic intentions.
Okay. Well, we have heard from all of our panelists in terms of what we need to do, where we need to go. The doors open to trade between both of us, but both ends have said there's need to bolster. We understand there are a few barriers and challenges which we're all hoping to work through. I want to thank my panel this evening who would have joined us. Ms. Alphea Wiggins, the Prime Minister's Special Envoy to Suriname and Guyana. Trisha Tannis, Chairperson of the Barbados Private Sector Association, Rekhar Bissumbhar, Chairperson of the Private Sector Association of Suriname, and Henk-John Guicherit, the Director of Suriname Investment and Trade Agency. I want to thank you all for coming on board. It's been a great program. We know there's a lot to look forward to in terms of these two countries assisting each other. I wish to thank you all, our viewers, for coming in this evening, and our callers. This has been The People's Business. I'm Wendy Burke.